Itza, and Uxmal. These new centers carried on many Maya traditions, albeit in a modified form. Furthermore, the abandonment of the southern cities appears to have been relatively orderly. There is a lack of widespread evidence for a final desperate battle or a citywide massacre in many key sites. Instead, it looks as though people simply packed up and left, leaving their temples and palaces to the elements in a surprisingly peaceful manner. Of course, this theory is not without its critics. Many historians argue that it downplays the very real evidence of suffering and violence found at the end of the classic period. Skeletal remains from some sites do show signs of malnutrition, and fortifications were being built around some cities, suggesting a state of conflict. The idea of a perfectly coordinated, top-down exodus of hundreds of thousands of people seems logistically improbable. It's more likely, critics say, that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. A combination of environmental pressures and social strife led to a breakdown of authority, prompting various groups to leave at different times, rather than one grand, unified departure. The mystery endures because the evidence can be interpreted to support either a collapse or a strategic retreat. Our final stop is in the heart of the mighty Aztec Empire, in the city of Tenochtitlan, on the eve of the Spanish conquest in 1519. The traditional story is well known. The Aztec emperor, Moctezuma II, believed the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés was the returning feathered serpent god, Quetzalcoatl. This belief, according to the narrative written largely by the Spanish themselves, caused Moctezuma to hesitate. He welcomed the Spanish into his city, a fatal mistake that led to his capture and the eventual downfall of his empire. But a compelling conspiracy theory suggests this story was a clever fabrication, a piece of post-conquest propaganda. This theory proposes that Moctezuma never believed Cortés was a god. Instead, he was a shrewd political operator who saw the Spaniards as a potential, if unusual, new ally. The Aztec Empire was not a unified monolith, it was a collection of subjugated city-states, many of whom despised their Aztec overlords. Moctezuma, facing internal unrest, may have seen Cortés and his small band of heavily armed men as a useful tool to quell rebellious factions and consolidate his own power. He invited them into Tenochtitlan, not out of divine reverence, but as a calculated political gamble, an attempt to form a strategic alliance with these strange newcomers. The evidence for this interpretation lies in re-examining the primary sources. The story of Cortés being mistaken for Quetzalcoatl is most prominent in accounts written years after the conquest, often by Spaniards or their indigenous allies, who had a vested interest in portraying the Aztecs as superstitious and naive. It made the Spanish victory seem more miraculous and divinely ordained. Some modern historians argue that the Quetzalcoatl prophecy itself was either a misunderstanding or a later invention. They point to Moctezuma's actions, sending spies to watch the Spanish, testing their abilities, and attempting to control their movements, as the behavior of a cautious ruler, not a devoted follower welcoming a deity. This theory fundamentally reframes the conquest. It transforms Moctezuma from a weak, indecisive leader paralyzed by superstition into a canny strategist whose calculated risk backfired spectacularly. He underestimated the Spaniards' ambition and their ruthlessness. The debate continues because it is almost impossible to separate the original Aztec worldview from the thick layer of Spanish interpretation that has covered it for 500 years. Was Moctezuma a victim of a prophecy, or was he a victim of a political miscalculation, with the prophecy story invented later to justify the outcome? This question strikes at the heart of how we understand the clash of these two worlds, reminding us that history is indeed written by the victors.